In the age of Spotify, local record stores are getting harder and harder to find. But you should check out Old Gold Vintage Vinyl Pop-Up Record Shop, which is located in the heart of Osborne Village, at Urban Waves on 187 Osborne Street. Old Gold is providing Winnipeg with a vast selection of quality used vinyl, collectible and essential titles from rock, psychedelic, progressive, classic, hard and heavy metal, blues, folk, reggae, world grooves, soul, funk and R&B, jazz and special interest. You can follow the new shop on Instagram at Old Gold Vintage Vinyl 204 for new arrival updates and much more. When I started this podcast back in late 2012, I didn't really know what a podcast was. And things that are kind of common sense about the podcasting world, like RSS feeds and subscriptions and all of that stuff, I really didn't know what it was. I didn't know how it worked, and I just liked with recording things with my friends and having conversations and interviews and talking about music. And all of the technical stuff kind of fell by the wayside because none of us really knew what we were doing. Once I sort of figured out what I actually was supposed to do and how podcasts were supposed to work, I eventually signed up with a podcast hosting company that helped me get my show onto iTunes, onto Spotify, onto all these platforms, and helped me do it properly. So that was great, but when I transferred all of my hundreds of episodes over, there was about 50 from 2013, 2014 era that just didn't make it across. It was my fault. I made a mistake when I was copying the files, and that whole section got missed. So those episodes are still available on the old Witchpolice blog, which can be found at witchpolice.com. So they're still there, but they're not searchable on most podcast platforms. If you're using Apple Podcasts, iTunes, whatever you want to call it, you can't go through the archives under Witchpolice Radio and find those episodes. You can't find them on Spotify, you can't find them in a lot of places. So I made a post on Facebook a few days ago listing those episodes, which I guess are considered lost episodes at this point, and asking listeners which ones they'd like to hear if I re-release some of them so they would end up on the official listings, on the official archives, and so people could hear them. Because of those 50 episodes, there's a lot of really good content that I would like to see brought back to the forefront. So, to provide some context, the older episodes of the show from that era were in a much different format than the current Witchpolice Radio you're probably used to. For one thing, there were 2 hosts, sometimes 3. So the show was hosted by me and by my friend John, who was one of the original 3 hosts of Witchpolice. And while we did interview the guests were considered, at that time, to be more like guest hosts than interview subjects. And the format of the show was a conversation about music, where we talked to the guests about their own work, but we also had a theme word every week. And that theme word would dictate song choices that the host would make and the guest would make. And there's a gray area when it comes to releasing podcasts featuring recorded music that we don't have the rights to. And again, kind of going back to how I didn't know how podcasts work, I didn't know if releasing these episodes with songs by established artists, whether they were independent or high profile or whatever, to fit with the theme word each week, was an okay thing to do legally, and so on. So, when reissuing these episodes, I'm cutting off the song choices. We talk about the songs, and you'll hear like 5 seconds and then a fade out. But just to avoid any kind of hassle that may or may not arise from the questionable legality of using these tracks, I figured it would be best to just truncate those. So, it's a conversation, not so much a one-on-one interview. 2 hosts, 1 guest host, and a lot of conversation about themed song choices. And when I asked people which episode they'd like to hear, I got a lot of different responses, and I really do hope that I'll get to re-release all of the choices that people had, if not all of the episodes from that era. But the one name that came up the most was Slattern. So this episode was recorded in July 2014, and it's me and John in conversation with Julia Rickman, who is a bassist, vocalist, keyboard player, who performs fairly irregularly now, but performed quite often at the time under the name Slattern. I still hold up her first demo as one of my favorite recordings by a local artist of any genre, And my old band, which John was also in, the Mouthboat, played a lot of shows in the late 2000s with Julia's bands. She was in a pretty wide range of bands over the years, probably most notably Dis Hisses, which put out a record on Transistor 66, did, I think, a fair amount of touring, and so on. But she had a lot of smaller bands, a lot of weirder bands, and Slattern seems like always the consistent throughout all those groups. Whether it was the Gorgon, whether it was Da 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 Lasers, whether it was This Hisses, Slattern always seemed like the project she was doing in between those, because it was a solo gig. So this is a really great conversation. It's really insightful, despite the fact that we spend a good chunk of it talking about puppets. And as I said, Julia has always been one of my favorite local artists across kind of the spectrum of her projects. And I've always liked the solo Slattern stuff the best. So I hope that if you're not familiar with her work, listening to this old episode, which was episode 84 in the original number countdown listing thing, I hope this will introduce you to her stuff and make you want to seek it out and want to hear more of her work, because it's really good and it's highly recommended. And I'm glad that of all the episodes that were lost and didn't make the cut when we transferred services, that this one is the one people wanted to hear, because it's a good one. And Julia was definitely on the kind of wish list for both Mia and John as far as which artists we wanted to talk to once the show started getting guests. So again, not in the current format. It might be a bit weird to hear if you're used to the typical me interviewing someone style of Witchpolice, but it's a great episode, and I'm really glad that there was so much feedback from listeners who want to hear some of these old episodes. I'm not going to release them every week. I'm going to do it fairly irregularly, but you will definitely end up hearing most of the ones on the list, if not all of them, eventually. I hope you enjoyed the show.
You're listening to Garbage Hill, Winnipeg's first podcast network.
Welcome to Witchpolice Radio.
This is episode number 84. I'm your regular host, Sam.
This is your regular host, John.
And I'm the special guest, Julia Rickman.
Wow, that's great. We didn't even have to introduce you. Sometimes the introductions work, sometimes they don't when we do it. I find that sometimes I mean, obviously I know what your name is, but when it's someone I haven't never met before, I often second guess the pronunciation of their name.
Mispronounced a guest's name towards the end of a show, which is not so good.
Yeah.
Well, it was like their last name. I forget why. There's a good reason for it.
I think you mispronounced it twice on one show with the same guy, two different ways, but it's okay.
Moving right along.
Yeah.
So, welcome to the show. We have a randomly generated theme word that we're going to select some songs based on.
That just kind of gives a loose framework for the show and keeps things moving. And the word that computer spat out us this week is sock. Not even socks.
Oh, it's not
sock.
even plural.
Singular
just
sock.
Okay.
So, the way the show works is if whatever the theme word is, we all select songs that we connect to the theme in any way we can do it. So there's no real rules other than as long as you can justify why this fits the word sock, then we're good. So
All right.
Yeah, in an email to Julia, I'd suggested some potential associations.
Oh, did you?
I thought you could play, someone could play the meat puppets, because socks are often used to make puppets.
Right. These are more like the John tangents. John is notorious for taking very strange connections to the songs, but not so much lately.
Oh, you could have one. There's like a sock drip coffee filter thing that some people use. It's like a filter, but it's cloth and it's kind of like a sock, so you can reuse it. And so you could just go way off and play a song about
I was
coffee.
thinking about Christmas songs too, because stockings.
Yeah,
that came up a lot. Some of them actually refer to them as socks in older, old-timey kind of Christmas songs. But we should get to what we thought of when we actually get into the songs. So the reason that you're here is because you play music, and we like your music. And
Excellent.
I think that, like for our old band, the Mouthboat, I think that the majority of shows we played were with one of your projects.
Those were the good old days.
Yeah,
Those
it was cool.
were
There's a lot of
times,
shows we played together. And I think that, I don't know, Slattern, I guess, was the big one played, or was it? Who do we play with the most?
No, well...
You played with Dada Dada Lasers.
Yeah, a lot.
Quite a
it
lot.
Seemed like a lot, yeah.
But I think Slattern too.
Slattern too, and the Gorgon.
That were most... Yeah, and the Gorgon.
Yeah.
All three.
Yeah.
I kind of would sort of randomly book shows with different bands depending on which bands I'd played with that month already.
Yeah. Well, and it was great too because, like, I mean, I can't speak for the other guys. I'm sure they probably agree though, like the other guys who were in the band. But I really like all of those bands. I mean, I still think the Slattern, like the demo, and then that record you put out, the split, like I listen to them all the time. I really like it. So it was always cool for us that we're playing a show. You know, at least one of the people on the bill with us is somebody that whose music we're really into. So.
Yeah, I regret never having a Dada Dada Laser anything.
I had both CDs.
That's been recorded. What, did you guys record anything?
They put out a couple albums.
2 CDs?
Yeah, they're good.
Oh, man. All right, well.
I can hook you up.
Sweet.
They're in my basement.
Okay.
Awesome.
Some assembly required.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then Slattern has the demo, and then you have that split.
Yeah. So far it seems that Slattern reveals an album every 5 years.
Okay.
In a small form. So I'm having an interesting experience right now. So I think the first album was maybe 2004 or 2005. Probably
That's
2005.
the one on the little mini CD?
The little mini CD. And then I did the split 12-inch with Lipstick Face from Saskatoon, I think around 2010. Not sure. And then now it's 2014, and I'm trying to do this full-length album, but I recorded half of it. And now I'm having a very hard time tracking the engineer/producer down because he's on the road all the time. So I'm kind of like, is this my fate? Am I only supposed to release half-length albums for the rest of my life every 5 years?
That wouldn't be so bad, I guess.
Half length is a good length, I think. Like, how many songs are we talking?
Well, I already recorded 4,
Yeah.
but I would like to record another 4.
Okay. That's still a good amount, yeah.
2 sides of an album?
Yeah, that would
Not
probably
one.
be good, yeah.
That would be ridiculous if it was like a full album but just one side had music.
Would be good, yeah.
But I've heard some bands, I actually... I didn't purchase the album, but someone I knew purchased the album at a show in Winnipeg at Ragpickers where the band only had one side, and then they screen printed the other side of the record.
Oh, really?
So the whole
That's
thing
kind
was
of a
screen
cool
printed.
idea.
But they accidentally screen printed the wrong side, so there's actually no music on the album.
Oh,
that's
an
terrible.
unfortunate mistake.
Yeah, I think he contacted them, and they were so apologetic and mailed them one
Oh, just
right
for
away.
the one copy they screen printed the wrong side?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
It wasn't like the whole run of it. Yeah.
Obviously, room for error in handmade processes.
Yeah. Cool. Well, yeah, anyway, I mean, I think that when we started doing this show, we started off, we didn't have guests. For the first 10 or so episodes, it was just me and John and Rob, our other host, Rob Crooks, who's not here today, unfortunately. But we, when we started getting guests, we kind of had like this wish list of local people, and I think you were on the list from the beginning of like, someone whose music we like, and that's kind of the idea first, like, who do we know that we like their music, we want to talk about music with them. So, I mean, I'm really glad you're here. I think it's about time we had you on. Now we're 80-some episodes in. So.
Yeah, sorry it took me so long to
No,
make
it's okay.
it here.
I don't know how long ago we asked you, but maybe not until very recently.
No, I feel like it might have been a while ago.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe not years ago, but
Right.
quite a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're here now, and we're talking about socks.
Yeah,
we
so
will be talking about socks.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious what you might have picked.
For songs?
Yeah, do you have one you want to
just
start us off with?
Okay. Yes.
I see you have a few things, so do you have a decision to make?
Okay, so the only one that I came up with that I think is the most legitimately connected, because I think that I'm a bit of, you guys are making this show with these rules that make sense in this blanket tent studio.
Yeah.
And I was like, sock, what a ridiculous requirement. I'm just going to bring a song I like. And then I realized that a song I like has to do with laundry.
That works.
And washing machines, and the specific lyrics are in all your shirts and jeans and things.
So socks.
And it's also about tracking mud into the house. So I think that like socks is the thing that is alluded to but never spoken of.
Right.
Awesome. I think laundry machine, like that's people who look at the pictures we post on our Facebook and stuff. John's dryer is always in the background. Like it's
prominent guest at every.
It almost seems like the star of all the photos. Like it's the one consistent. So.
I also have a story about a sock. I could tell it now.
Sure, yeah, let's do this.
Okay, this is a news story. This is talking about things that I would not ordinarily talk about, so it's like kind of a secret. I, as of last fall, had to start wearing very expensive compression tights.
Okay.
Okay.
For my ankles so that they don't get swollen. This is not glamorous, except that the tights are the best tights I've ever owned in my life. As a performer, I've always gone through a small fortune of tights. When I do my taxes at the end of the year, it's always like $200 to $300 in tights, disposable tights. because I wear them on stage and I wreck them instantly carrying gear.
Right.
So I was like, whatever. My legs were tingling all the time, and it was almost like having like shocks flowing up my legs all day. And I was like, this is a little weird. I should get that checked out. So anyway, I have to wear these tights. And then I was like, okay, they're amazing. So then just like a month ago, I went to Iceland to shoot a music video for Slattern. Yeah. And I was wearing these tights because they're amazing tights, and doing this scene where the director was like, okay, walk on that uneven lava field covered in moss with your eyes closed. It'll look cool. So I was doing that, and I fell, and I ripped these tights, and I'm wearing them today. There's like a rip about this long, which is about 12 inches, and these tights cost like $160 a pair.
Holy shit. So this is like, if you rip one of these, this is like your whole
$80 tight, $80 sock.
Yeah.
So I thought I was saving money, but maybe I'm not.
But walking on lava rocks is,
But
seems like
covered.
It's worth it.
It was worth it, and it's covered by my health plan.
Wow, that's awesome.
So now my vanity products are covered by my health plan.
So your stage costumes are covered by, That's awesome.
Yeah.
So who is the song by?
This is by Kate Bush. This is from her album Ariel. Kate Bush has been always someone I've listened to, but recently has become almost all I listen to.
Okay.
Like some days it is Kate Bush every day for weeks on end. Often this album. And I don't know, for some reason it's like a double CD thing, and each one has a different name. So this is from the first CD, which is that to say A Sea of Honey?
Yeah.
Okay. And then the other CD is called A Sky of Honey.
Oh, cool.
But this is track number 4, and it's actually called Mrs. Bartolozzi.
Slooshy sloshy?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what I really like that. It was awesome, but I don't know what the lyrics have to do with the title. Do you know what the connection to this Mrs.
Oh, no idea.
Bartolozzi
In fact, I've never read the lyrics other than what I could understand from listening, and that's something notorious about me. I almost never read lyrics and don't care other than what I can make up in my head.
Sometimes that's better.
Sometimes that's how they're written. Like, I think some people start with like a sound, and then you find words that fit the sound, and so it isn't the words per se that are most important, but just what they sound like.
I feel like I read lyrics if they're in the liner notes, because usually when I first get an album, whatever format it's in, I sit down and listen to it while going through everything that comes with it. So if there are lyrics, I usually read them then. Or if I forget something and I'm like, what did he say there? And then I look it up.
But so Kate Bush, I don't know if Sam mentioned this before during the song, but was played just once before on an episode.
Episode 16.
There you go.
Now it's episode 84, so it was a while ago.
And another artist that I've never really listened to, and the person was also raving about
huge fan,
Kate Bush, and so I was like, I should really check this out, and I never got around to it.
Mm-hmm.
So
I did. I really liked it actually. I didn't. This album I didn't hear, but I kind of just went online and downloaded a partial discography, and I'm pretty sure I still have it. Some of it I listened to. Some of it I was like, I'm not into this. Maybe I give it another shot. But yeah, good though, from what I've heard, which is not as much as I should have, maybe because I did like what I heard.
Mm-hmm.
What song did they play? Do you remember?
Oh, I don't remember now.
Was it one of sort of the 80s hits?
Yeah.
I would say so.
Yeah, it was very gloomy, which is not.
The hill, or about the.
I don't remember what the theme was.
This was last year, and it was a while ago. Everyone should re-listen to that episode number 16.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned you really like her voice, and you're known for having a pretty distinctive singing voice.
Yeah.
How have you been? Well, so you had training in opera singing, is that right? Or
yes. That continues to this day.
Really, that's what I was going to ask, because that's not something that it's hard to maintain. You have to keep working at it.
When I was younger, I remember up until the age of 5, I was pretty outgoing, and then when I started school, I became shy and studious. And then when I was about 12, my mom asked if I would like to take voice lessons.
Okay.
Because she took some voice lessons and she thought singing was wonderful. And I was so embarrassed that she even asked me because I was so shy. The idea of singing horrified me. But then I became obsessed. The upcoming year from there, I became obsessed with... And I was a piano player, so I just like to hide with my piano. And anyway, I became obsessed with Phantom of the Opera and Les Miserables. Listened to those tapes on repeat. And then got the piano book, started playing the piano with those songs. And then when people were outside in the summer, my family members, all of them, I would sing in the house, thinking no one could hear me.
Yeah.
But of course, I think my mom must have heard me and asked again if I would take singing lessons. And I said, yes, I think I will.
Cool.
That's how it started. And then I've never taken, I train September to June. Summer's off, so that's now, I guess, over 20 years of lessons.
Wow.
Different teachers over the years.
And so do you perform this, other than the music that we know you from? do you perform singing-wise? Just solo?
I used to more in my early 20s.
Yeah.
And then once I started doing bands, it's just that was all consuming, and I didn't even necessarily, I didn't have a way to make classical singing interesting for me at that time. And I think it's sort of who you meet. I feel like at the time I was interested in doing more experimental opera in Winnipeg. I didn't know anyone, and there wasn't anyone on my radar that even was remotely interested in that. Yeah. Now there's all these kids doing the Cluster Music Festival.
I think I've heard about that. I don't know.
Yeah, it's really far out there approach to new composers and new music.
Oh, cool.
It's I've performed they'll do sort of their more sort of, I want to say, really unconventional, but still within the realm of sort of classical music, academic composition sort of performances, and then they'll often have some, rock musicians who are doing interesting alternative things at the end.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I remember.
Sounds interesting.
To sort of close the evening.
I couldn't make it to the thing. Yeah.
So I played that, but then I met all these people who were doing this experimental stuff, and so if I had met them in my mid-20s, I maybe
totally different
could have been off doing that and not making Slattern records.
Yeah.
But
I think that your voice is unique because obviously you have that background, and I think that all the bands you've been in are all fairly different aside from that, and I think it's something that, I mean, for me anyway, I had never heard anyone singing with I guess call it rock music, just for lack of a better word, because there's a lot of different subgenres and things in there. But in any of those bands, I'd never heard anyone singing with that style, with that kind of music. So I think it works really well. But did you ever have any? I mean, obviously Slattern, it's just you, it's different. But with the bands you were in, bringing that kind of background to what you were doing, was that ever difficult for other people to wrap their heads around or anything like that you worked with, or was it pretty much just this is how I sing, this is?
No, I think I've always been lucky. I've always played with incredibly talented people who are also really into experimenting and fun.
Yeah.
I think my biggest challenge has always been myself. When I started Slattern, this was before the Gorgon, I did all these crazy things with my voice because I was like, I'm a trained singer. Yeah. I won't hurt myself. And within a few months, gave myself the beginnings of a vocal node, which for anyone who doesn't know who's listening is sort of like a blister on your vocal folds. But if you keep doing those things, that blister never heals and it starts to scar, and then you have a gravel voice for the rest of your life. And for lots of singers without training, they just, it can destroy their career. They either have to have surgery or they have to stop singing for 5 years. So I happened to get it diagnosed pretty quickly, and I just sort of didn't sing and barely talked for a month. And I literally would not talk around the house. I would just... as I would talk to teach my music lessons, which is what I was doing at the time, and then I would go home and be quiet. And it
must be hard. I mean, as someone who sings a lot, that must be difficult for you to. It must have been difficult for you.
Well, it was very important to me, and it was. But I remember there was actually right after I was diagnosed, I actually had 4 days where I didn't have to teach, so I didn't talk at all. And my roommate at the time, we were writing notes and gesturing, and then one day I accidentally said something, and he was like, ah! But. Okay, so that and when I started the Gorgon, I thought I had to sound tougher and less technical because I was trying to be cool and sing garage rock. So I started trying to sing bad.
Right.
But then I realized that, and it wasn't until we started to record our first album that I realized that singing bad was just bad singing. Right. It didn't make it more cool.
This came up
It's
recently on a
just-
podcast where
Yeah.
if you're trained or can sing, to try and not sing well,
It
just
doesn't work.
Doesn't
No.
work.
Yeah,
No,
like
comes
yeah,
across.
I think I mean I like a lot of voices that are unconventional and often technically bad, but it's not because they're good and it's not because they're technically
They're trying
skilled
their best,
and they're
yeah.
slumming. It's because that's just the
Yeah.
best they can do and it sounds unique. But yeah, someone who actually knows what they're doing, it seems like it would almost come across as forced. I don't know if that's what you're.
Mhm. It did, and like physically, I was forcing
Yeah,
because
right,
I thought
right.
that that's how I could make it sound cool. So it took until that first. Well, oh right, the Gorgon only had one album. It took
Yeah.
until that album to realize that I probably should just sing good.
Just go with it. Yeah.
And that was a very important lesson to learn. I feel I read something really interesting on the internet today because of course I was in Iceland and I'm obsessed with Iceland, and I started I liked the Reykjavik Grapevine, which is this paper they put on in English in
Okay.
Iceland, and I think it's like partly sort of a tourist thing, mostly a tourist
Mhm.
thing, but it's still really interesting. And it's this artist whose name I totally cannot remember. But he was talking about, he had a real sort of no bullshit attitude to music, and why would you make music? Why would you put things out there? And I don't know, I don't read a lot of music journalism, but you know, he really was just like, if there's like a space, like you should make a record if there's a space where there's something, you know, you really need to express.
Right.
Or something that, you know, you hear in your head that you can't hear anywhere else. Like that is the impulse to make a record. And I don't know, that's a pretty universal statement. It's like, I don't know, I'm not going to invest a lot in that, but I've always, like, that resonates a lot with me. I only want to make a record when I feel like I need to make something because no one else has done it, and because
Right.
I sing in such a strange way, I feel like I can get away with that.
Yeah.
No one else is singing like this.
No, it's true.
I
yeah.
can justify making this record.
What's okay? I mean, this might go off. This might elongate this whole section of the podcast. But why were you in Iceland? How did that? I mean, you mentioned it a few
Oh,
times. It
yes.
just seems like
So-
we should. Yeah. What's
Should
the
we get to
background?
that
of
after a song? Is that a long one?
Yeah, we can always ask you about that later. We can come back to it if you want.
Well, I guess you're going to edit this, right?
Nope.
Oh, you're not going to edit
No,
this?
let's tease the Iceland.
We'll talk.
If you want to find out why Julio is in Iceland, stay tuned. Sal, why don't you play a song?
I'm gonna play a
in the
song.
meantime?
We'll talk about Iceland later because I'm actually very interested in why you were in Iceland. Because it's not really the place people usually go to do a video. But
Yeah.
I'm gonna play a song. That last song had lots of references to clothes and laundry. The song I'm gonna play has lots of references to clothes, not necessarily dirty ones, but usually when I play a song on the show, I'm pretty known for playing older stuff. It's rare for actually any of us really to play kind of more recent songs. I tend to stick around, I don't know, late 70s, early 80s kind of era, and 90s, I guess, you know. But anyway, I found something that fits the theme that came out 3 months ago. So it's a bit unusual. It's a song called Diamond Socks, so obviously the connection is there. It's by a guy called Ibamar and a group of producers called Notice, Notis. And the song, how do I explain? Basically, the guy is talking about what he wears, and he's wearing diamond socks. He's wearing Wallaby Clark shoes. He's wearing an Arrow shirt, which I looked up and apparently is a type of men's dress shirt, and a mesh marina. Do you guys know what a mesh marina is?
No.
No.
Mesh marinas, I think, are hilarious. If you've ever seen a 1990s dancehall video, or seen a really bad compilation album that's supposed to be very reggae, there'll be a guy wearing a mesh sleeveless shirt, usually red, gold, and green. You can see through it, like it's really kind of like a stereotypical beachwear kind of thing.
Mhm.
So you can see the chest through the shirt. It's made of mesh. It's got no sleeves.
Marina?
It's called a mesh marina, and I didn't know what it's called, but it's having a comeback. Like the whole like early '90s dancehall style in Jamaica is like a lot of artists are kind of going back to that style. And in the music videos, a lot of them are wearing mesh marinas again. Which I mean, like anyone in the early '90s, like Buju Banton, Beanie Man, Bounty Killer, everybody, they're all wearing mesh marinas, and now all of a sudden, they're all wearing mesh marinas again, and which is hilarious to me. I mean, it's just a weird article of clothing. And I heard this song on the website Large Up, which is one of my favorite websites. It's kind of a culture blog from the Caribbean, and it keeps me kind of up on a lot of reggae that I wouldn't otherwise have any way of hearing here in Winnipeg. So. It's good for that, and they did a whole feature on the return to the mesh marina. So when I first heard this song, I had no idea what mesh marina was. I knew it was some kind of clothing article because of how he's talking. But reading that article about its comeback, it's just a really weird cultural thing that you don't really see here. Probably because of the weather. But I mean, I can't imagine most Winnipeggers wearing one of those. Like, it just seems very unlikely. But they're cool again. So this is Diamond Socks by Ibamara and Notice.
All right, Witchpolice Radio. We are back. We're with guest Julia Rickman and Sam. What was that?
That was Diamond Socks by Ibamara and Notice. And yeah, Mesh Marinas. I just think it's the reason I like the song part of it is because he's so extremely specific. I mean, I don't know anything about clothes. I don't even know the brands of clothes I'm wearing, but it's the fact that he's so specific about what he's wearing. Like, it's not just like a blue shirt or whatever. It's like the brand name of the shirt, the brand name of the shoes. Normally that would annoy me in a song, but for some reason this is I don't know. I like it. And yeah, Mesh Merino is like it's such a weird thing. I think it's very culturally specific. I don't know. I can't think of anyone else other than people from the Caribbean who would be wearing those. Like, partly because of the weather.
Yeah.
And here it wouldn't make sense, but
get a really weird tan with one of those on.
I
yeah,
have
you
one
have
of those.
Yeah, you have a Mesh Marina?
Yeah. It's a little bit different. It actually has sleeves.
Okay.
And it's white.
Yeah.
But the whole body part is big mesh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've never worn it.
I feel like I've seen those in certain maybe clubs.
yeah. I mean, it's cool. It's a weird thing that. Well, anyway, part of the other thing about the song though is that he mentions at the beginning, he's like, old fashioned, them call me. He's talking about this whole Mesh Marina thing is part of a throwback. Seems to be happening with a lot of dancehall, which is fantastic for me because like a lot of dancehall recently has been extremely club oriented, very very auto-tune, well past the time when auto-tune was cool in America and in Canada and stuff. And like a few months ago they're using auto-tune still, and here it's kind of mostly gone away, right? And it's like really really just just kind of crappy, boring, generic dance music for the clubs. And there seems to be like a throwback thing happening, and I really appreciate it because it's more like the type of stuff that I listen to, the type of older stuff that I listen to. So I mean, that rhythm was very very kind of throwbacky. Obviously the clothing is throwbacky, and some of the other videos that people have done just that come to mind with the Mesh Marina. There's a Mr. Vegas video where he's wearing a ridiculous Mesh Marina and like all these giant gold chains and stuff, again with the throwback stuff. And so whatever is going on in Jamaica where they're kind of looking back at older material and kind of reviving it makes me happy because yeah. But again, large up the website. I mean, I don't want to be promoting someone else's website here, but it really is like one of the 2 or 3 things that I go to every day on the internet. Because I listen to, as has been established on the show, like really ridiculous amounts of reggae, but a lot of it is older partially because the time frames I've sort of like subgenres I'm really into from certain eras, but also because I don't have access to a lot of newer stuff. I mean, I have the internet, but I don't know what I'm looking for. Like, I'd never heard of either the producer or the artist on this, and because
you need an in.
Yeah, exactly.
Unless you have a friend who knows reggae or something like
that.
But
even most of my friends who are into reggae are the same as me. They're not actually from the Caribbean, and they don't have the connect. They don't have like cousins or whatever sending them the newest stuff, and they kind of have this sort of set eras of older stuff they're into. So it's really cool to have a resource that keeps kind of pointing you to new things. So yeah,
cool. Well, before the song there, we sort of teased that we would get into why Julia was in Iceland.
Yeah, it's unusual.
Because you mentioned you shot a video there, but you also kind of said that you went there to shoot a video. So is that accurate?
Yes. Last summer I went to Iceland for 18 days just to travel around.
Yeah.
And then I went back to school, and it's been a long time since I was in school, and it was a little bit traumatic. I'm not going to lie. Mostly for my identity. Being a musician and then going to law school does terrible things to your brain and sense of self. So, but anyway, the reason I the reason why I went to law school is that my mother really, really thought she really wanted me to go to law school. And,
Specifically.
Well, yes,
okay.
but I mean, my mother really wanted me to take singing lessons,
right?
And that was a big success. Yeah. So and there's been some other things. So she had like a pretty good list going. But anyway, my mom got sick. Right. Okay. My mom got sick with cancer, and so then I applied to law school. So then I got into law school, and then my mom passed away, and so I started law school in this place of so much grief and just in general a bad place to be, and so it was like a very hard year. And then in January, I started feeling really manic. I stopped crying every day and started feeling manic. And I was like, I have to record these songs for Slattern. I have to do all these things related to my music. And then I was like, oh, I should go shoot a music video in Iceland. And then once I thought about it, I couldn't not think about it.
Right.
And I thought about it every day until I went there. And it was for a song about my mom.
Okay.
About losing her and feeling just that, like, incredible need to, like, believe in, like, magical thinking and to think that maybe she's still around. Maybe there's still, like, something of her in this world, some energy, some ghost, some spirit, some, like, you just, like, just not wanting to let go. And that's what that song is about. And also about cancer and about my own fears. I don't know about fears. Fate, decisions about my future, where her mother died of cancer, my mom died of cancer, totally different cancers. Yeah. But I'm just like, there's not the greatest track record for me.
Right, yeah.
So it's like something that also becomes this reality for me. It's not like maybe I can worry about it and be afraid of it, but, you know, I could follow in my mother's footsteps. And in some ways, I kind of would like that because it's like a shared experience of like if you think about, I don't know, knights or soldiers or like some sort of old-fashioned way of romanticizing the world, which I'm sure in the moment was not romantic for those people at all. But just be sort of like, if this is fate, to just like go, if you can't do anything about it, to just like be ready to meet it and know what to do about it is sort of, anyway, here I am talking and going on and on about this. Not a short story at all. But anyway, so I thought, oh, I'll go to Iceland. So then I convinced some people to come with me to shoot this video. And we went for another 18 days in June and shot this video, which is about the song that I wrote about losing my mom.
Oh, cool.
My mom was an Icelandic. The Icelandic part of me comes from my dad's
side.
So
there's a connection. Okay, but there's some kind of family connection to Iceland, though?
Yeah, there's a family connection, but it's like, for that video, it's just like I needed, like for the emotions and for the things I was thinking about in the song, it's like it had to be like utterly like impossibly beautiful landscape. Yeah. Because in this video, it's like the nature and the landscape is a character. It's like a force. And that's sort of what had to be in that. So that's why I went there. That's why I didn't just shoot it in Canada. No matter how beautiful Canada is, there's something in Iceland that's very different.
Like otherworldly kind of?
Yeah, and very close together. It's a very small place, so you can go into really dramatically different landscapes in a couple hours.
Right, whereas here you got to travel for,
Yeah.
Cool. Not. This is totally not related to your story, but when I was just talking about mesh marinas there, I was just looking up that article that has the history of them. Actually, they were invented in the 1930s in Scandinavia, so the connection to the Caribbean maybe isn't as strong as I thought it was. So perhaps people, So I'm not sure when they would be wearing mesh marinas, but like it must have been over top of other clothes or something, or I don't know, in the 30s. Like it's very strange, but I don't know who started the diamond socks, but. When is that video going to be viewable?
Well, it won't be finished edited until maybe November. The person who's editing it is be traveling for a while. So maybe in December, maybe in the new year. Okay. No rush. Mm-hmm. When it's ready.
Cool. Well, I look forward to seeing it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, if people want to see other videos that you have, do you have like a page, or should they just search for something?
Oh, well, I think just like if people search YouTube Slattern Baby Love Hurts.
Yeah, that's a good video.
They'll see my only other Slattern music video. Yeah. If they search.
Yeah, you have other bands we haven't even touched on yet, and there are videos there too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm gonna launch my own Julia Rickman website. Oh, it's empty. Good. Shortly. It's ready. It just hasn't gone live yet.
Just with like all of your stuff that you've done?
Yeah, kind of like a sort of links to everything I've done.
Cool.
As well as things that are not so much straightforward music as more like, like I have my artist CV on there and things like that, because I do some other things with music and filmmakers.
Well, I remember also going back to, when you played shows with us all the time, the posters were always really cool. You did a lot of those. Those were mostly done by hand, right?
Yeah, ghetto style in my kitchen.
Yeah, I still have some of those.
Oh, great. Oh, I still have screen printing ink all over my walls.
Nice.
From taping the posters up and being messy.
Yeah. I feel like that was kind of a consistent thing, too. Like, I mean, obviously, I don't know how many bands you did those type of posters for, but I mean, there's a few of them at least, right?
Oh, there's a lot.
So, and I think it's like, your voice is consistent throughout all those types of bands, even though they're different styles of music. And same thing with the posters. It's kind of a style that's recognizable, which was cool. Again, for people who are into one of your projects, they could, hey, this looks familiar, and then they find out that you're in it.
Yeah.
And,
For a while, I thought about signing them or having a signature, and then I was like, no, it's more interesting if it's people have to figure it out. And it's cool because it was a tremendous amount of work. I would like hand screen print easily 200 posters, sometimes with more than one color. And then sometimes people I didn't know would come up and be very shy, and they'd be like, "Oh, I collect your posters, but don't worry, I take them down after the show." So that's always really sweet. I feel funny because in those days when I did this screen printing, it was very hard to have friends because all I did was have band practice and screen print posters and put them up. Yeah. And I remember once I was trying to date this guy, and I was like, "Well, okay, we can hang out, but only if you come put up posters with me." And it's like. I just don't think I could do that anymore, but it was a magical time.
I was always wondering at the time, like, I was thinking, it must be horrible for you to make all of these, put them up, and then, like, a few days later, someone just rips it out.
Well, but I got really strategic. I would carry a milk crate, and I would step on the milk crate and put up posters really freaking high so that people can just take them down. I was also obsessive. I would, like, poster and reposter. It was just part of the game. Like, I accepted the rules, and,
That's pretty great.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I still have a few of them. So.
Cool.
I have the one with the semaphore on it.
Yeah, I like that one.
That was a good one.
Oh, yeah. I made a couple of T-shirts. Oh, yeah, didn't I make a T-shirt for your wedding social?
Did you? You played at it? You played at the... Oh, no, you played at the other thing.
Yeah, but I made a T-shirt with the semaphore image.
Yeah, you did. I think you did, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
You did, yeah, maybe. It was a long time ago now.
It happened. I remember.
Cool. Maybe I'm going to play a quick song here.
Sure.
I was looking up different songs to play. I didn't have anything that came immediately to mind. Like, as I mentioned, I started making kind of ridiculous associations.
Yeah. As you do.
As I'm wont to do. But this one's pretty straightforward. It's in the title. It's a song by The Shadows called Scotch on the Socks. And there aren't any lyrics. They have sometimes they have lyrics, or there can be singing. There's no lyrics in this. It's an instrumental. I interpret it to mean you have a couple scotches on the rocks, and pretty soon you start spilling them a little bit, and you get scotch on the socks. Mm-hmm. So let's listen to The Shadows.
Cool.
Okay, we're back.
That was good. That was a peppy little instrumental.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It almost sounded like one of those things that from, I guess, the same kind of era where all of a sudden there'd be instrumental and then all of a sudden everyone would yell something, and that would be the only vocal. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I kind of feel it was missing that, but that was good. I see how the title and your interpretation of the title makes sense with that kind of,
Scotch on the socks.
Yeah, it's upbeat. You're having a party, spilling some scotch on yourself.
Or do you ever do the thing where you spill it and then you just wipe it up with your sock?
Well, that's true, yeah.
Maybe that's what they're talking about. Maybe that's what they had in mind.
Either way.
Yeah, I clean up all sorts of things with my socks. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anything that's on the ground, really. Or I kick it under the stove.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
For the time that'll never clean under there.
Yeah. Right. Eventually, maybe you'll have to... No. Stove breaks. What are you going to do? Get a new stove?
Yeah, so that was that was the B-side on a single. And I forget what the A-side was, but I didn't like it very much. It was it wasn't as good. But yeah, I like kind of that rocky, kind of surfy stuff.
Yeah, it was good, yeah.
I wish I had more of that. I don't have very much stuff like that on record.
No, in records I have like a bunch of Venture stuff. That's really about it, like for that kind of surfy. And that wasn't even that guitar wasn't even all that surfy, really. I guess it was a little bit. I guess.
I need to hang out at JP's more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's got a pretty decent collection.
Oh, does he ever? Well, and his girlfriend Kaylee, she had a huge record. I would say that probably at least half of that's hers.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe even more than half.
Of surf stuff? Is that what you're talking about?
Oh, all sorts.
All sorts.
How is it categorized? He's got
by genre.
Yeah, but the genre is like very specific ones that like I don't have even anything in per se.
Yeah, definitely.
Like one could be called like Midnight Movies or something.
Maybe.
No, I just made that up.
But something like that.
Something like that.
Well, yeah, because all his radio shows are done by themes, not unlike this podcast. Yeah. So they're really organized, and they keep, whenever they're listening to records, if they hear a certain lyric or song, they have a notepad where they write they write things. And
meticulous.
I feel like I need to do that for the show because, I mean, I find that a lot of people coming on the show will have a really extensive list of songs because they've got one of those computers or iPods or whatever full of music, and they just type in like socks or whatever the word is, and it bing, there's a bunch of songs. I don't have that. All my stuff is mostly on physical media, so if I have to like dig through a bunch of records and tapes and stuff, and I often feel like, I spent like a couple hours trying to do this and someone just in 3 seconds. So I think I should be taking notes if there's a song that I kind of want to play on here eventually. I just write down a bunch of words that connect with it or something. I don't know what to do, but make a spreadsheet.
I feel like that if I started that, it would just become really disorganized. You know, like how you write notes and you just have like piles of scraps of paper.
Yeah, it would be that. It would be that for sure. Yeah.
So then I would just be going through piles of scraps of paper. It wouldn't save any time.
Yeah, I feel really for this, like if something comes to mind right away, I just kind of try to stick with it, and then because I know with some themes I've bombarded you and Rob with ideas, just like song after song after song after song after song, and I'm sure you guys hate it, but yeah.
So I don't check my email.
Yeah, probably yeah.
Yeah, so we mentioned JP, the group that you most recently played with, This Hisses.
Yeah.
You guys did some music videos, did you not?
We did one.
You did one.
We did one.
I remember it being
I wish we'd done more.
I think you were shooting it across from where I used to live. Were you shooting it at Patrick's house?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
His creepy old house.
Yeah. I heard some creepy stories about that house.
Yeah.
Yeah. Haunted.
Yeah.
Across from the spaceship house that you lived in?
No. The apartment.
Okay, yeah.
So is This Hisses more or less like, is it on hold? Is it defunct? Is it, what's the status?
I think I would use the word on hold, but
who knows?
Could be it.
Yeah.
And this is terrible because I feel like I have a reputation for letting bands just dissolve.
Letting people move away.
And not doing like the big hurrah show. Like the Gorgon, it just kind of got to the point where it didn't make sense anymore, and instead of doing a big last show, we just didn't.
It seemed like kind of fizzled, right?
Yeah, and people didn't really even know we weren't a band anymore.
Yeah. I think I saw an article in Uptown or Stylers or something with you in a new band, and then I was like, oh. I guess that's what happened.
Probably what happened.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's fine, it's like, whatever. But then with This Hisses, it was a little more, it's a little sadder because I think we could have done a big last show, and we sort of tried to, but it just ended up being a show that wasn't as well publicized. Like, we didn't put the energy into publicizing it well enough, and it was a super cool show with very few people. So we ended up playing our last hurrah in this beautiful, studio space on Princess and the Exchange with, like, projections on the walls and, like, really cool. Just, it was a really, really great night.
Yeah, that's a neat space, yeah.
Yeah. And then,
it wasn't during the psychedelic thing, was it?
Yeah, it was.
Oh, I was there.
That's
okay. That was your last show?
That was our last show. And you were there?
Because I remember you did a big hurrah for the Lasers last show. Like,
yeah.
We played at that. That was fun. Yeah.
That was great. You see, I did it right, and then I never repeated the goodness that I experienced.
I still have that poster, too, actually.
Your hurrah show.
With the anchor on it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess it's hard because that band, we're all friends. Right. So it's like when the ending was going to happen, it was like, well, we're all friends. But with other bands, it sort of was energies dissolved, and then you can't fake that. You can't. Yeah.
Well, a lot of big bands seem to do it.
Fake it for the money, right?
2 or 3 years after they've finished, but
when there's no money involved.
Yeah. When there's not. Yeah.
Then it just seems wrong. But so we'll see. We tried. JP and I tried actually getting a new guitar player. Okay. But that was just too weird for me. Like, I honestly, the first jam we had with this guitar player, I just, like, I couldn't even jam with him because, like, I don't know, like, Pat's irreplaceable. And
it's like, easier just starting from something different almost than trying to...
Well, we were going to just start sort of a new sound, but it's just, like, I just was so shy, and I just, like, Pat just, like, I just fucking love that guy.
Yeah.
And just wasn't ready to move on, like, just like a relationship. My heart was broken, and I wasn't ready to love another.
I think also with the 3-piece, though, right? I mean, that the band had a very distinct sound, too, and each member of the band contributed something pretty specific to that, so I think it would be a lot harder. I mean, if you're in a band with 10 people, which I have been in the past, like, replacing the second sax player you have is not a big deal, but like in the Mouthboat, we couldn't have replaced anyone, I don't think. I mean, we did one show with Rob filling in for John when he was away, and it went okay, but it wasn't... like if John had left permanently, we wouldn't have replaced him with Raw. It wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, so, and Pat is a very I really like his guitar.
Yeah, for sure,
style.
He's very distinct, and and it worked super well with that band. So
yeah. And I mean, I was ready to move on to other things. I was, as much as I loved everything about This Hisses and still love it. Yeah. Musically, I needed to move somewhere that was less loud and less aggressive. And like I don't think that Pat and I could have gone there together.
Right.
And he wanted to move to Toronto, so that that made sense. But I like as the kind of vocalist that I am, I was just finding it very hard to be writing with such loud guitar parts. Like that's the sort of beauty and the tension, but it also was something that I could no longer do. And emotionally, I mean, like the absolute honest reason why that band broke up is that my mom died, and I just couldn't handle anything in my life, really.
Right.
Like anything outside of taking care of myself, I couldn't handle. So like I had to let that band go because I kept that band together. Like whatever sort of happened, it's like I always had the energy to make it work.
Yeah.
And then I had no energy and had to just like let it all go because that's just the truth of the matter. And then also it's like my mom's death has changed me, and so it's like I want to make different kinds of music with different sounds. And so coming back to my solo project has been really important.
Yeah.
And also I've still been doing work with Rob Villar.
I was going to ask
way back.
What do you think Rob Villar is up to right now?
Well, okay, what sports games are on right now on television?
I don't know.
Do you mean like this minute, right?
Yeah. As we speak.
Well, I would say 10 o'clock that he could very well be watching some sort of late night sports event.
Yeah.
Or listening to music.
Okay.
I think that's what a lot of people are doing at this hour of the night. Yeah.
Well, sports event though. That's pretty. So he's into his
Super
sport.
into sports.
Yeah.
He watched all the like NHL drafting and
Holy shit.
some of the
Okay.
FIFA.
Oh, okay.
I followed the NHL draft very unnecessarily closely. I bought all the magazines like predicting the ads.
Really?
Yeah, sure did.
Sided Sam.
I can't wait.
Did not know.
It's like as soon as hockey season starts, it's like the best.
Oh
thing
yeah,
ever.
you are. Yeah, you are pretty into hockey. I
Yeah.
like hockey, but I don't like hockey.
Yeah, I actually was considering taking my lunch break and going down to the Iceplex to watch the development camp. I didn't, but I was considering it. But that's not for this is a different show.
Okay, let's get into another song.
Yeah, do you have something else you want to do?
Sure. Okay, so this was like really stretching it. I also just brought random things I liked in case I just freaked out.
Some honorable mentions.
Yeah.
Okay, this is like a really far stretch. I feel bad that I didn't work harder to get a sock theme. I'm sure
You could have faked it and just told us like it was we don't know what's the first.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of songs on like this. I like on this album. This is Quintron, Too Thirsty for Love. Do you guys know Quintron?
The name sounds really familiar.
Okay.
I don't know.
So do you want to hear the story now or after
Yeah,
the
please.
song?
Sir. Let's hear it
Okay.
first.
Hear it first?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's listen to track number 2, Waterfall. So, Julia, how does that relate to the theme of the show? Sock. Well, guys, let me tell you.
Host this show.
Let me tell you. Okay, so this is more like super freedom association with the term sock. Quintron and Miss Pussycat, I met them when they played in Winnipeg, and I actually went down to play with them in where they live in New Orleans.
Oh, cool.
At this bar, this sort of underground bar. And the way that sock plays into this is that Quintron's wife is named Miss Pussycat, and she does these puppet shows in bar venues. And I'd read about her years and years and years before I ever even knew about the music part, because I was really into puppets, and I subscribed to the Puppeteers of America journal.
Holy shit!
And there was an article
I didn't know
about
that was a
her.
thing.
That's really.
So when I
puppets.
met them, and I was like, "Wait a minute, that's the person I read about,"
Yeah.
and I said, "I know, I read that article 6 years ago or 3 years." So I think I really impressed them with my extensive puppet knowledge.
Yeah, for sure. That would.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, and when I went there, they actually let me stay with them. And this was post-Hurricane Katrina. They lived in a shotgun-style house, and it was sort of almost like a duplex that they had. So one half was their living quarters,
Okay.
and the other half was Miss Pussycat's puppet studio.
Oh, cool.
And so, it was really cool, but it was also really creepy because
You're in
there
a house
was
full of puppets.
literally a room wall to wall covered in puppets. And her puppets are quite large, and I don't know if they're made out of socks.
Okay.
But here's where the sock comes in. When I was sleeping, I had this really weird sensation of someone drawing a spiral on the bottom of my foot, and I think I was wearing a sock. And it freaked me out because I was like, "Oh my god, it's a puppet!"
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
totally.
But then, of course, I don't think it was a puppet.
Did you
It
sleep
was-
on the puppet side or the living quarters side?
I slept on the puppet side.
Oh
Wow.
man,
Yeah.
that does sound very freaky.
So, okay, just to rewind a little bit here, way back when you were really into puppets, how did that? I don't think I've heard anyone say that ever.
Okay. Well, this is another example of me being ahead of the times in Winnipeg because
Is
I
puppets a
was-
thing now?
no, it's kind of over, but there was
Okay.
a wave of puppet collective that happened
Really?
here, and they were doing things like bringing in Jim Henson's daughter,
Oh,
Heather
yeah,
Henson.
that's right. I heard about that. Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
this is a big deal. Now,
Yeah.
if that had happened when I was really into puppets, maybe I would be a puppeteer and not in law school.
Or doing
but-
music. Yeah.
Or, I
Well,
maybe
probably,
would
yeah,
have
it
still done
sounds like
music.
you still did. Yeah.
But actually, I gave up puppet making when I started playing rock and roll.
Okay.
So there's this few-year block. I was obsessed when I was a kid, too. Actually, ever since I was a kid, I was obsessed with the marionette maker Ronnie Burkett. He's a
Okay.
Canadian playwright who does all his plays with these elaborate marionettes, and they're absolutely emotional and dramatic and beautiful and difficult. He deals with difficult subject matter like death and AIDS and all sorts of things. Anyway, so I was really into making puppets, and I was looking into doing my master's degree in puppetry
Really?
in the University of Connecticut, and I was like really seriously thinking that that's what I needed to do with the rest of my life. And I started teaching puppetry classes and doing all this stuff. And then I just was suddenly one day I was like, puppets are so creepy. I can't do this.
So you hadn't considered them creepy up until then? It just hit.
It just dawned on you. Yeah.
It just hit me one day
Yeah.
with my stack of puppet magazines and puppet books and
Yeah.
puppet supplies. And I think the problem was I started putting human hair on puppets I was
Okay.
making because, like, whatever, you cut your hair, you have some hair, why not use
What
it?
are you going to do with it? Yeah.
And that, I think, was like the line that I crossed that I should never have
It's
crossed.
like voodoo doll zone, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah. So that's all behind me now. Oh, except that I have this really elaborate plan to make a shadow puppet video for Slattern as
I was
well.
going to say, like,
Yeah, it seems
that's
like you could combine
very
the two,
good
for
fodder
sure.
for like a very
Yeah.
cool video.
Yeah.
With using
So
puppets.
that's what I'm supposed to be working on this summer
Oh, yeah?
instead of watching Netflix.
But Netflix is so easy to do.
It's so easy.
Yeah.
So do you still have? So you're making puppets, and do you still have these then? You
They're
must
locked away in a
Okay.
trunk in my basement with lots of music gear stacked on top
So
so
they
they
don't get
can't
out?
escape.
have. Yeah, yeah.
But that's a good fallback, right? If music doesn't work out or law
Yeah.
school doesn't work out, you can always
Yeah.
go back to puppetry.
Oh,
Sounds
yeah.
like you have,
Yeah.
So do you still have? I mean,
I almost want to just talk about this for the
yeah,
rest of the show.
I'm fascinated.
can.
Well, yeah, it's like it's an interesting art, and I feel like I don't know anything about it. I've only seen very little, but I
I have
imagine
kids,
there
so I
being
watch a lot of puppets.
great appreciation for the craft of it, not only making them but
Mhm.
also making them come alive. So is this something that
Yeah.
you're still sort of keep an eye on?
Okay, so I have to tell you about something that happened this summer. I've always been into gardening, and then suddenly I decided, and it may be from being in Iceland because they're really obsessed with Huldu folk, which are the hidden people.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they have
And-
to talk about that in Gimli all the time when you have the Icelandic festival. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so there's just this culture of like this belief in these people who are like they look like people, but they live in rocks.
The
And they're
little, right? Are they little or no? They're not?
no, they're like regular sized
Okay, I
people.
didn't know that. I think I saw the
Um,
dolls maybe, but
Yeah, well, I think that like sometimes there's representations of them being more elf-like,
okay.
but then there's also stories where they're just like humans.
But they legit
wear-
believe in them there, right? It's like it's
Well, that's the big thing is that like some people say yes, and they actually have laws protecting
okay
Huldu folk.
as a cultural
Homes.
kind of. Oh wow.
Like they won't destroy certain rock formations to make a highway if people can say that the Huldu folk live there. So, but it's kind of like one of those things where okay, like people they won't really say they don't believe, but they maybe wouldn't say they believe.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But either way, they're not going to talk about it to me, the tourist.
Of course not. No, no. They're just going to tell you what the company line or whatever. Yeah, party line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They do tell me on their traditional Icelandic day they eat sheep's balls and get really drunk and swear, but they weren't going to talk about the Huldu folk.
So you have to be an insider to.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
But I'm going to start learning Icelandic and then maybe one day. So anyway, so I think that all this Huldu folk was like getting into my brain, and I was like working in my garden this year, and then I was like suddenly obsessed with little garden gnomes, like not big ones but little ones.
Okay.
So then I started being obsessed with finding little things in thrift stores that could be the possessions of the dwarf, and then I started thinking that I would like to build a house for my dwarf.
Okay.
Not a dwarf, a gnome.
Like
Yeah.
dollhouse kind of
Gnome.
style, like a.
Well, I was looking up how to build like pretty legitimate stone houses.
Oh wow.
So this is where the line is bringing me back into puppetry. Is I want to spend my time building stone houses for my
gnomes.
gnome.
Yeah.
The invisible gnome and his.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of visible. It's like that. But then I was
Yeah.
kind of like, but you could actually get rid of the sort of fake gnome and just be building the shelters.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking about this shadow puppetry video I want to make. So it's all kind of coming back at me right now.
So when you least expect it, puppetry rears his head. Yeah.
Well, it's when there's a vacancy, right?
Right.
So it's
right.
like I suddenly am not having band practice every night. So I'm thinking about gnomes and puppets.
Well, one thing I want to say about puppets though is, like, I have 2 kids. You know, I mean, I see a lot of children's television, and shows with puppets, older shows, newer shows, whatever, versus shows with, you know, computer generated cartoons. There's no comparison. The Muppets and that kind of stuff is just like infinitely better. I mean, I can't even, some of this like crap that, you know, it comes out now, and it's the graphics are fantastic and everything, but it's not. There's no like emotional resonance that you get. I know that sounds silly talking about kids shows because a lot of them are just like, hey, look at this colors, but you know. But I find that some of the stuff with the puppets, especially like the Jim Henson stuff, it's incredible how actually, you know, like moving some of the content is, and how it's. I mean, I've never considered I was into puppets or anything like in a way other than just appreciating it on TV. But I think that especially for kids, puppets are a really good way to teach them stuff because it's different. It's like because a cartoon is not. I mean, I don't know if we should even be talking about this right now because we have a theme, but a cartoon is one thing, and you know it's obviously not real because it's a cartoon, and the laws are pretty much, you know, whatever you want to happen can happen in a cartoon. But puppets are not real and real at the same time because it's, you know, it's live action.
Yeah, it's like they've broken through a barrier.
Yeah, it's like its own.
Made the unreal like tangible.
Yeah, which is and often in kids shows, especially something like Sesame Street or the Muppet Show or any of that. I mean, the Muppet Show arguably isn't a kids show, but you know, Sesame Street is a good example. The puppets are always interacting with real people, so it's like it's like a weird alternate universe, and there's no one questions that the puppets are puppets.
Yeah.
Like, I love that. Like, no person who's on there is like breaking down a wall or anything, and they're just like interacting with whoever.
Yeah, it's not like, oh hey Grover, you're a blue monster. Like, what are you doing here? It's just like, oh hey Grover, how's it going? You want to go down and get some chips? I don't know. I like,
Witchpolice recommended documentary, which you've probably seen. Beauty is Embarrassing.
No, I haven't seen that.
It's about the guy who he worked on Pee-wee's Playhouse. Did the puppeteering on that. Fantastic. Yeah, really cool. Really good one. I just watched it a couple weeks ago, I think.
I saw that documentary about Kevin Clash, the Elmo puppeteer.
Oh, really?
Which came out before all of the allegations against him, which were all dismissed apparently recently. Like all of his. I
didn't know there's a documentary about it.
Yeah, it was a documentary about it. And it was a really fascinating documentary because I mean, you know, like he's a very unlikely puppeteer. I mean, you know, like his story is not what you expect, you know, and then I saw the documentary. I was like, "Oh, this is a great documentary." I'm really, you know, because I've seen a lot of Sesame Street lately, and I was telling everyone about it. Then like a few weeks later, all of a sudden, it's like, "Oh, maybe I shouldn't be recommending this to anybody." But right. yeah. So
okay, well, we have 2 more songs to go. Sam, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I do. I guess we were talking about people watching lots of sports earlier, and as we mentioned, I watch a lot of hockey. That's really about it, though. I mean, I watch soccer sometimes when I can. I have no interest in football, and I especially have no interest in baseball. It's probably the most boring sport to me. I mean, especially on TV because they have 2 camera angles, and it's just the same thing over and over again. And unlike the sports that I like, there's no time limit. Baseball just kind of goes on until a certain amount of outs or whatever happen. I barely understand the rules. But when I was thinking of socks, there's a couple of baseball teams that have socks, S-O-X, in the names. So I thought, okay, well, maybe there's some kind of connection that I can make to this. Not really knowing that many baseball songs because I'm not into it. I was just, I was thinking one of them's from Boston. And then I remembered that a band from Boston that talks about baseball and other very stereotypically Boston things is the Dropkick Murphys, who I used to listen to. I haven't listened to them recently in quite a long time, but you know, when I was a teenager, I was really into them, the first 2 albums they put out. And I've seen them live a couple times, once back then and once maybe 10 years ago. In very different circumstances, which I can talk about after we listen to the song because it's kind of an interesting story. But they apparently, with the Boston Red Sox, they play at the games a lot. Like they play their songs at the games, and they actually physically play at the games. Like they do the anthem sometimes.
There's lots of time like in between innings for things to happen.
Right. I mean, and then they're very, very Boston centric band. They're very kind of you know, good old America. You know, we're all like. Gangs all here kind of vibe. So and they've kind of risen in popular stature over the last few years, you know, last few decades or whatever. So it makes sense that they're playing in baseball. Apparently they recorded kind of punk, you know, like their Irish punk thing they do, version of some old Red Sox song that's been around since the 20s or something. I'm not going to play that because I didn't really like it very much when I listened to it. But they have a song called I'm Shipping Up to Boston, which was prominently used in the movie The Departed. The Scorsese movie. Right at the beginning, it's in the opening credits, and it's appeared like all over the place. Apparently, it's originally lyrics are written by Woody Guthrie, and they just added their own kind of punk music to it. And the song makes no sense. It's like a very, very simple lyric about some guy who's a sailor. He loses his wooden leg, and he needs to go back to Boston to find it. I'm shipping up to Boston by the Dropkick Murphys. Yeah, Sailor, Wooden Leg. I have no idea what the point of the lyrics is. Apparently it was written by Woody Guthrie, which is weird because, I don't know, he seems a lot more eloquent than I lost my leg. I need to go to Boston
Yeah,
to find
maybe
it.
it's all in the tone.
Could be. I'm not sure what the original... I don't even know if it was originally recorded by him. It's from what I could read about this, it was just they took his lyrics that he'd written and put their own music to them. But John, like you were saying while we were listening, that's very obviously Dropkick Murphys right from the first couple notes. I mean, it's I think a lot of other bands now do that kind of style. That whole Irish punk thing, it seems to like be its own subgenre now, which is weird. I mean, I remember when I first heard these guys, I thought it was kind of cool. I mean, I know other people have done it before them, like the Pogues and stuff, right? But I mean,
I can't imagine going to a show and having like not just one band play a bunch of
A
songs
whole
like
bunch
that,
of
but
them, yeah.
like 3 in a row.
have you seen the Dropkick Murphys live though?
Oh, maybe. Maybe.
Because I went to one show they played here at the Rendezvous.
Yeah, that
and,
would have been around the time.
And they played with the Dwarves, who were amazing.
Yeah.
With the Distillers when they were touring for their first album, which was really good. I still have that album; it's great. And the Bouncing Souls, who I can kind of give or take. But and Dropkick Murphys, and they were the headliner. And I remember what ended up happening was this is maybe 97, I'm gonna say, is that they got stopped at the border, so they were delayed. So people were kind of pissed off. It was a full rendezvous, so a lot of people, and people were pissed off waiting. Some kind of altercation happened between the bouncers and some of the kids in the crowd. I think the bouncers were kind of a little rough with them, or whatever. And then all of a sudden, like a huge group of cops showed up and basically shut the show down. And so, of course, everyone, mostly being teenage punks, is not very happy with this. So there's more kind of yelling back and forth with the cops. Eventually, everyone just sits down and refuses to leave. And it was just this really long, drawn-out thing. And eventually, the guy from the Dropkick Murphys came on stage and he said, "Hey, we're here. We're sorry we're stuck at the border, but like, the cops are shutting us down. We can't, like, we came here to play the show, and they're not letting us play." Every other band had already played their sets except for these guys. So they ended up playing an acoustic set with the bagpipes and the tin whistles and all that stuff in the parking lot, which was awesome. So everyone was just like hundreds of people in a circle around them in the parking lot, and they just did a whole acoustic set. So I mean, for this kind of music, is very, very heavy on the sing-along ability of it. So it was probably better than the actual show would have been. So for the people who stayed, but there was some kind of unreasonable number of cop cars. Like I remember reading or seeing on the news the next day or something. It was like, I don't know what the number was, but it was a percentage of police force that was just very, very high. Like and there was a couple kids and some bouncers. That was it. There was no. But I guess they thought punk show. Aggressive kids. They had the canine units there and everything. It was ridiculous.
Wow.
So that was the first time I saw them, and it was really great because the acoustic show ended up being awesome, and I was really into them at the time because I was 15 or whatever. And the second time I saw them was about 10 years ago in Minneapolis at the Warped Tour, and we were there for a bunch of other reasons, and it was like, oh hey, Dropkick Murphys are playing. Let's go to that stage and see them. And it seemed like before they played, the crowd was just the usual mix of people you'd see at a punk show, people with mohawks, people without, whatever, just a random punk crowd. And as soon as they showed up on stage, all of a sudden everyone was wearing green. It seems like people must have had like Irish shit underneath their shirts or whatever, and they just rip it off, and everyone's singing along, and it was bizarre because there was no indication that this was a Dropkick Murphys crowd. It was just the same crowd that had been there for whatever generic punk band played beforehand. And like they're really good live, and it's not really my type of music that I'm into most of the time, but I think I would, given the opportunity. I don't know if I'd spend a lot of money to see them live, but if I happened to be somewhere they were playing, I would probably. I mean, because of the nature of it, everyone knows the words, even if you have never heard it before. It's pretty easy to pick up on, and when you have hundreds of people kind of chanting along,
it's gotta be fun for them.
Oh, for sure, because they don't have to say anything. I mean, they just basically hold the mic up. But I mean, even at that point, I hadn't listened to them in a while. I mean, I kind of listened to them around 98, 99, 97, I guess, whatever the show was, when I was really into them. And this was, maybe almost a decade later, and I knew all the words to the songs, and I'm like, how do I know this? So, yeah, I mean, I haven't heard anything since their first 2 albums, and they probably have 8 or 9 by now. So I can't comment. I mean, this is one of the newer songs, but I can't comment on the quality of their records. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those bands that I think I like and probably would like, but you know, yeah, good band, Boston.
Socks.
Baseball socks. Yeah.
Speaking of which, I forgot I'm not wearing socks.
You're not wearing socks, no.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. Seems like you would almost like on purpose be wearing socks because you knew the theme was socks.
Yeah, bring out my best socks.
Yeah, we should take some pictures of your feet and.
That's okay. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this has been episode 84 of Witchpolice Radio. If you want to check out any of the other episodes, you can go to witchpolice.com. There's a podcast link. There's a bunch of episodes, a bunch of themes, a bunch of guests. Yeah, it's all there for free download and streaming. And you can also hear us on Monday nights at 11 o'clock on 101.5 UMFM. And we're getting with the technological times. You can find us on Facebook. Yep, Facebook/Witchpolice Radio. You can find us on Twitter at WitchPoliceFM. We're on Instagram now. I think you just look up Witchpolice Radio. I'm not sure what they... Are there things going on with Instagram? Yeah, I usually post some pictures from when we do the shows and the, the cover images and all that stuff. And then we have a SoundCloud page that kind of occasionally gets updated. It's basically on some of the episodes, if there's a really interesting story that we've kind of flagged, we just kind of take a clip out. Maybe the puppetry story on this one will end up on SoundCloud. But yeah, and I'm sure there's other places you can find us. You can find us on Stitcher, which is an app for listening to podcasts. And on the actual radio. Which I already said. Did you? Yep. Thank you. And our guest has been Julia Rickman. Of Slattern. And
presently Triunfo de Gato.
Oh, so this is we didn't even talk about that.
We didn't, no. Another time.
That's what. Yeah, that's something that I know you mentioned years ago, and I was always like hopeful and waiting, and I don't think I've ever heard anything. So stay tuned, listeners. And you can find This Hisses video out there if you want to check that out. And a Slattern video. And the records, right? I mean, where can people get... I mean, this has had 2 albums, right? They're around? Yeah. They're in record stores across Canada, as well as the good old Into the Music and Music Trader in Winnipeg. Cool. Is there anywhere people can find... I mean, do you have digital versions of them for the young youths who are Bandcamp. Bandcamp? Yes. Cool. What's the... Also, there's all sorts of Russian music sites that let you download things for free. Are you encouraging that? Well, it exists. Da 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 Lasers albums, they're all available in the Russians. Oh, really? In the Russians. That's awesome. So help yourself, John. Okay. John's like looking up frantically. I'm writing down talk to Russians. Cool. Excellent. Okay, well, thanks for tuning in. I'm going to close out with a track that I just found, Care of the Internet. Okay. This is a song from the 40s by Louis Jordan called Your Socks Don't Match. Bing Crosby is doing vocals on this as well. Wow, that's awesome. Cool. But Louis Jordan was he was a band leader guy and was really popular, I think, in the 40s. Yeah, the name rings a bell for sure. And I think... Not that I was there in the 40s to remember him, but... Yeah, but a bit distinctive because he was not only the band leader, but he would sing a lot, which wasn't very common. And I think that gave him a lot of rights to his own stuff, instead of, just playing a lot of covers or whatever. Which is probably what most of them did standards and stuff, yeah. Yeah, so he enjoyed some popularity, and I don't think I'd heard his name before this. But, yeah, we'll close out with some Louis Jordan, Your Socks Don't Match. Awesome. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for coming. Yeah. Thank you.
We heard a chick just the other day cooling out her boyfriend in every way. She kept on quonking.